Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with Kat Conches. Welcome to the show, Kat.
Thanks. That's great to be here.
So why don't we start off with the inaugural question I ask every guest. Tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about yourself.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, the reason I'm on here is because I'm a nurse and I'm neurodivergent. So I have a history of an ADHD diagnosis and anxiety. And I've been a nurse for over 15 years and I love it. But it also, being neurodivergent has created some difficulties. Aside from just what I do for a career, I'm a mom. I have three boys.
Oh God.
So I have three boys, and I'm married. I have a loving husband,
Mhm.
and I live in Minnesota.
Good. I got family in Minnesota.
It's a nice area. I've
Is it?
never, but to be fair, I've never lived elsewhere. So
Yeah. All right. Let me start off with I've talked to so many people who are ADHD and have kids. Um, Do you walk around your house and find like cabinet doors open, or one of your kids is standing there staring at the refrigerator, trying to decide what to eat, or and constantly closing and then finding yourself doing the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. So aside from my ADHD and anxiety, my oldest son is pretty moderately ADHD. And so, and I'm pretty sure one or both of the other ones probably are too. But it's fairly common in our house to walk around and there's doors open, there's lights on. The lights are a big thing. Nobody can seem to remember the lights.
Oh,
Um, for me, I have the hardest time with, I don't know if this happens to you, but I go and get something out like food and it's from the pantry and I end up putting it back in the refrigerator. So I end up finding things in the refrigerator that aren't meant to go in the refrigerator. So,
yeah, I've had that. I mean, I've had the oblique go in for water and putting the water back into the refrigerator and then closing it and realizing, didn't I just pour myself a glass of water from the refrigerator? Why did I put it back in the refrigerator? Or going for a
exactly.
pitcher of water and instead of putting the pitcher back in, putting the glass in and thinking, what am I doing with a pitcher? And where is my glass?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, that's a constant thing around our house. I think what more for my son, it was always for his ADHD going through school, it was always more of his impulsivity and the emotional aspects to ADHD that were harder for him. And I definitely see now that I know more about myself that he probably gets that from me.
Now let's talk a little bit about that. Do you do you see a lot of yourself in your son, and does your son see a lot of himself in you?
Say that he probably does. Um, I think he probably could relate to it more early on because me growing up, I was always told, your constant worrying and you're being hard on yourself and your need for acceptance and people pleasing. Oh, it's just anxiety. I got told that all the time because it felt like when I was younger, if you weren't a hyperactive boy, then ADHD was off the plate. Like obviously it's
Mhm.
not that. And so he had a lot of support and in identifying his ADHD and helping him early on, whereas it's taken me a long time to get to where I'm at. So I had a very late in life after college diagnosis for my ADHD. And so I think there's probably more that he could probably see and relate to growing up than I really understood.
Now, let's go back. When did you realize you were neurodivergent, being that you were ADHD? And when you got your diagnosis, did everything start to make sense to you at that point?
Oh my gosh, yes. I tell everybody that. I'm like, it's all of a sudden everything like snaps into place and you feel like, oh, okay. I I'm not crazy. I know we don't like, I don't know, like using that word, but uh for a long time there was a part of me that felt like, geez, is there just something like wrong? Like, why can I not? So for me, what was the struggle is the anxiety and um perfectionism and people pleasing. So everything kind of focused on the anxiety portion of it. And so I went away to college, and obviously that's a lot of change in life. And so I started seeing a therapist, and I did that all through college. It was extremely helpful. So don't get me wrong. Um, and I did the medications, I tried that, and it just felt like nothing ever clicked. And I still had racing thoughts and I
Mhm.
still felt scattered and just like I just scattered and not put together. And the answer, whenever I would ask and talk to my doctor and my therapist, was always, well, let's try a different medication. And so I did that for years until I had my son, saw the symptoms in him, started researching, started learning more about it, and identifying that a lot of the things that I was seeing, that I was feeling are actually associated with ADHD. So I turned around and said, hey, is it possible that I could have ADHD or something else like a comorbidity instead of us just focusing on the anxiety all the time? And my therapist right away was, oh yeah, that's absolutely the case. She was like, it is something that goes hand in hand a lot. And so once I got a diagnosis and, tried medication and started focusing on what I could do for that, yeah, just like you said, light bulb, everything all of a sudden felt just light years different, just absolutely complete 180.
Now let's talk about school for a minute because I went through when I went through my master's program in England. No medication, no nothing. And I can say it was a challenge because as you know, when you got ADHD, your level of distraction is the simplest thing. You could be sitting taking a test and someone could be walking down the hall and your attention's gone. It's like the old cartoon of the dog sitting there going squirrel.
Yeah.
And I remember for me, even with with on-time testing, sitting in a proctor room, everybody around me, the noises, the ticking of the clock was like a taunt. Like, you got to get this done. How did you handle that? Because I know it drove me nuts, and I've always had the fear of I don't want to be the last one there.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Um, that is an awesome question. And it's trial and error because if you think back to when I was in college, I didn't know at the time that it was ADHD,
Mm,
but I knew that the ways that my classmates were studying and what they were doing and what I was being told was the right way, quote unquote, to do it, what
mhm.
was not working for me. So I started trying things my own way. So, for example, everybody would talk about meeting and studying at the library.
All right, go on, continue.
So, for example, like everybody would talk about meeting at the library
Yeah.
and studying there, and I learned super quickly that that was not the way for me to study.
Oh
just like
God,
you were talking. Oh God, it was the
tell me
worst.
about it.
So
Everybody I know when I was going to school was going to the library, and I'm like, I don't, I'm, I can't handle the library. It's too quiet.
yes, exactly.
I
So
can't handle
any
quiet.
little thing would draw my attention because
Yes,
it was too quiet. So I
yes.
learned that early on and then unfortunately avoided the library like the plague. I went there to get books and left with them. And so I knew
I
that
mean,
that was not for me.
no, the only time I've ever used the library is when we had to do our dissertation meetings, projects with our group, with my group. That's where we would meet, and that was it. Every other
Mm,
time, I would do my work in my room, and that was it. I would do everything in my bedroom, in my flat, and the library was like this foreign building I would never enter unless I needed IT support from somebody in there. Like, can you please sign up my account for the school? Or I can't get my email. That was the only
hurry up
time
so
I
I can
touched
get
the
out of here.
library.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, so same as you, like I ended up studying in my room works so much better for me.
Oh yeah.
I always had to have background noise.
Hmm.
So typically some sort of music, but nothing that I was going to sit and sing to. So a lot of classical music, um, things without words. And then I like to be able to move around a lot. I have to move around a lot. And I like to be able to sit differently. You'll find me on the floor a lot. I stop and I stretch and I move a lot. So all of those things were just, I started kind of listening to my body and was like, well, this isn't working for me like it is for everybody else. What feels like it would work? And that started to make it at least a little bit easier.
Hmm.
I still felt like there was that difference of, wow, why does it seem like studying and getting to the point where everybody else is feels like it takes 5 times more work when what they're telling me they're doing.
Hmm.
Um, so it was frustrating, but a lot of trial and error. That's all I can all I can really say about that.
How did you get through college? I mean, was it a lot of just trial and error? This didn't work, that works. A lot of going to professors, scheduled office times for help. Did you create your own study system?
Yeah, I mean I try to utilize the resources. So I went to professors, like you said, open office time, so that was extremely helpful. I knew that a lot of times it was just that I needed it explained to me a little bit differently. And I needed to kind of one-on-one, that always helped immensely so that I could ask questions. I used to, growing up and all the time, would apologize because I ask a lot of questions. I don't anymore because I realize that the reason is because my brain is thinking about it differently. And so I just go into things now telling people, like, hey, I'm going to ask a lot of questions and I'm just telling you that's because that's how I process things and that's what I'm doing. And so I learned that part as well back when I was in college and just started leaning into that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get over this fear. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. My professors are not scary. They're meant to be there to help you. So I really started trying to get some one-on-one time and different, looking at things differently, a different way, different explanation.
Hmm.
Um, there was a lot of things when I was in college too, where they were starting to have more online resources and things where, you know, there was other students that were, would draw out like maps and they would use like visual interpretation. And so you could find those kind of like resources and notes and like different ways to kind of look at the subject matter you were studying in a different way. I definitely it was much easier for me when I was doing hands-on, like my anatomy and
Oh
physiology
yeah.
lab, cadaver lab, which I know people think it's a little scary, but I loved because it was very visual and hands-on and you can see it, you can very tactile. So I loved that.
I mean, I think a lot of us who are neurodivergent I know there's a two different sides. There's those who are very visual learners, and then there are those like you and I who are very hands-on, like this is what you need to do, and this is you follow the instructions by doing everything hands-on. I mean, I know for me, I'm a very hands-on type of learner. If you want me to absorb that knowledge, not forget it, you're gonna need to sit down with me and show me step by step and not write it on a chalkboard or say read a book because to me the book is technical jargon my mind can't comprehend.
Mhm. Do you like to read?
Used to love to read. I used to love to listen to audiobooks, but I can't get that mentality back. I used to love it.
Mhm. And I've been thinking about that lately because I love books too. And that is something that I realized that is actually kind of a struggle. I would find that I was on the same page over and over and over
Oh,
again. So
okay.
like you're talking about just being a different type of learner, a lot of my nursing education was these big textbooks and it was, hey, you got to sit down, you got to read this. And it was really hard because I had to try to maintain that focus and I had to keep I kept ending up at the same spot over and over again. And I knew it just wasn't working for me. So um you'd asked about study systems, flashcards for me were so much more helpful. I started putting visuals together with what I was learning and combining that and putting that in on flashcards, and that helped me immensely.
Because, yeah, I mean, I know with me, I mean, that whole philosophy of being stuck on that one page, that's how I am when I can read. I'll be fine reading something, but the problem stops the minute I put the book down because then I come back and I don't know where I left off, and I wind up reading what I just read, and my mind goes, there's a click, and all of a sudden my mind goes, "Oh, you just read that paragraph before. I don't want to reread what I just read." And it's like then it becomes that whole thing of, do I really want to go through it all and figure out where I left off, or just forget about it? And I forget about it, and that's I think is the big roadblock is with me at least is I don't want to have to reread what I just read. I really should start using bookmarks or folding the page, figuring out what page I'm on so I can continue reading from that point on.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad I'm not alone in that because I loved to read, but it feels like by the time I finish a book, I've read it probably 3 or 4 times by that
Yeah.
point.
I mean, it's the hardest thing, especially with ADHD, is you get distracted so many times, it gets to the point where you're reading and you get distracted and you're like, you know what? It's not worth it. Every little distraction hit comes at you and you're like, it's not worth the effort to try to figure out a time and space to relax and read.
Yeah, yeah, no, completely.
And then when people say, "Oh, you can read in bed," no, by the time I'm in bed, I'm exhausted by the end of the day, and I can't even focus on reading because I am so tired.
And that is a huge thing I learned about ADHD as well, is that that meltdown,
Oh,
that the masking, keeping everything together all day long, and then you get home and you're in your safe spot and you just kind of melt down. And that has been one of my biggest challenges since finding out that I'm neurodivergent and starting to realize that the difficulties that I have had as a nurse and trying to just organize everything in my life, going to work, making it through work, masking, doing things the way that we're told that we need to in the healthcare system. Um, and trying to fit in with everybody neurotypical around me. And so I'm doing that all day long. And then I go home and I also have to, be present and be put together and be on my game for my kids.
Yeah.
So by the time you get to bed, I'm absolutely exhausted. And my husband was always like, why are you talking about being so exhausted all the time? Like you would think that you were out running marathons and I'm like, it's mentally draining. It's mentally fatiguing. And it really does have a physical effect.
People don't understand that when we're out in when when most neurodivergents are out in society, they put on a mask. And that mask drains every ounce of energy you have because you're pretending to be something you're not. And the greatest analogy I have of this is imagine having a child and they're running late for school. They got to get to the bus. You throw them in the shower, they come out of the shower, they're still wet, you can't dry them off. You throw their shirt's on backwards. You get them out onto the bus. Now they're wet, they're itchy because their shirt's on wrong, and they have to deal with all the noise of the kids on the bus. They get to school and then they get all this information coming at them from all different angles, and along with being taught all these different topics. Now they're holding this all in. They get home and they just let go.
Mhm.
And that's what a meltdown is. You get too much information thrown at you at once, and your mind can't hold it. Your mind can't deal with it, and it just snaps and it reboots. And a lot of time there's tears, a lot of time it's all we don't understand what's going on with our own selves, let alone trying to explain it to somebody else who doesn't know why we're sitting there in the ball crying, why we're banging our
Mhm.
head against the walls, while we're pacing or stimming to try to regulate ourselves.
Mhm.
It's a lot of information coming at us, and to try to like for you to try to explain to your husband what's going on, who's probably your husband's probably a neurotypical, and he doesn't see that side of the world because he
Mhm.
doesn't need to mask. So it's like a whole other world to him.
Mhm. And it is to a lot of people. And I don't fault anybody for that.
No.
But it's hard to explain. You're absolutely right. So you're just trying to figure it out yourself and kind of struggle through it and do the trial and error. And it's a lot and it's exhausting. And I was starting to see more and more of these patterns of that kind of exhaustion and um the masking really being difficult for me in my nursing career. So I was having harder and harder time um, with just things like talking to managers and trying to, ask for accommodations or things, but not knowing how to ask and knowing that I needed to have a different environment or I needed to try something but not really being able to put it to words. It is a big problem. It's a hard part of having, one of these diagnoses or just being neurodivergent is trying to explain it and trying to put to words when, like you said, it's a lot of times you're just trying to figure it out yourself. You're internally saying, okay, why am I feeling like this? For me, a lot of times it was, I feel like I have to cry I don't, and there was no other way for me to explain it really, other than that's just what I felt like I needed.
Yeah.
I just like a release. It was too much. There was too much overwhelm, and I just needed to. And my husband was always trying to fix it, and I love him for that. But it isn't something that that I know now that I want or need fixed. It's something that I just need to do. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of what you were talking about is a lot of people with neurodivergence. It's just things that we need to do to help ourselves and to help our bodies.
I mean, yeah, society really doesn't understand the neurotypical mind. And that's how part of our problem is we're going out into this world and we're taught, oh, you have to act a certain way. And that brings me to the next question I want to ask you is how do you juggle being a neurodivergent mother and a nurse and a wife and having a son who's neurodivergent as well? How do you juggle all that while trying to remain calm and focused?
Yeah, it's a good question. And to be fully honest with you, sometimes I sit down and I'm like, how did I make it through that day? But but in the end, I think the things that have honestly helped me the most are mindset,
Mhm.
exercise. So things that I kind of before were just sort of like, it's people talk about it. Maybe it's kind of trending, whatever it is. And I was like, I don't know. I started to really dig into it more. I was a school nurse for a while, and they were really focusing on the idea of growth mindset. Um, and I started to really lean into that and learn a lot more about that. And like Carol Dweck. So she's amazing. She has a great book and she talks about the power of yet. So I started using that a lot too. So I really had to work hard at kind of switching my mindset because there are a lot of things that, I want to be a certain way because of who I am and my ADHD and my brain. Like I want it to be a certain way and I want it to go a certain way. And it's difficult when it doesn't or things change and they're different. And I think my anxiety
Mhm.
um, kind of leads itself towards, pessimism more often than not, just because you start in with the worrying and these different parts of having anxiety, and you just feel like, woe is me, nothing's going to work out. So I have really focused on mindset and kind of talking myself through things, noticing when I have negative internal self-talk and really switching that around. And that's helped me kind of come out of these moments where I'm feeling like it's too overwhelmed, or I'm just too overwhelmed, or I can't juggle all of these things. And so that's been extremely helpful. Exercise. I used to, I used to laugh. My therapist all through college, I would tell her how fatigued I was. And of course, remember at this time, I didn't know that I had ADHD and my brain was trying to do all these things. And so her answer to me always was, well, you need to expend energy to get energy. And I was like, oh, like, that just sounds exhausting to me. I don't want to, I don't even want to manage that. So now though, I have to go out and move and do something. I really enjoy running. I like to bike. I physically notice if I've gone a few days without doing something, without moving my body, doing some exercise, that I feel differently. I don't like the way I feel. It's more of that internal sluggishness and the increase in the fatigue. And I start to feel more um, moody and scattered. And so um, even when I'm at work and, nursing can be really demanding and it kind of demands that you multitask and do these things that are counterintuitive to a neurodivergent brain. I have started taking movement breaks and using my, 15-minute break to do some stretching, do some yoga, do some breathing. And it's kind of this accumulation of all of these
Mhm.
little things that I feel have really helped me manage and juggle everything that I have going on.
Now let's talk a little bit about your nursing career. I mean, Has being neurodivergent helped shape your experiences as a nurse?
Oh, absolutely. And I think early on, I probably didn't realize it. So there are definitely some things that, hindsight's 2020,
Hmm.
but it absolutely has shaped it. I am a huge proponent now of making sure that people realize not just the struggles that somebody with neurodivergence has, but also the gifts. And I think a lot of the gifts that I've gotten because of the way my brain works have made me a better nurse. So it makes me, I'm extremely empathetic. I really, really put myself in other people's situation and positions. And I have a very strong sense of wanting fairness.
Hmm.
And those things have really lent themselves to, I think, being an even more compassionate nurse. Um, in other ways, on the flip side, of course, it's made some things harder. Um, Healthcare is not, I would not exactly say it's like a flexible environment. Um, we're in the job of keeping people alive and healthy, and there are textbooks and ways of doing things that are definitely you're supposed to do it this way. So it's really hard when that's not the way you think of it or you can't follow that way. So I've had to just do kind of a lot of things that I can on my own. So I have a little desk space where I work now. I have different lighting. So like I have a lamp there. I have a fidget. I have a few fidgets, things to help me focus. Um, and I just have a lot of, pictures and things around me that remind me of what's going on and what my focus is. It's definitely a noisy environment. So I oftentimes will find myself using like noise canceling headphones and things when I'm charting, and I don't need to be um, focused or present on whatever's going on around me. So as long as it's safe, then you definitely will find me with noise canceling headphones on too.
Now, let's talk a little bit about this. You've mentioned that nurses often struggle to advocate for themselves. Why do you think that is, and how can that be addressed?
So my whole journey has really led me to kind of this. I started this business for this exact purpose, is because I had such difficulty with my path in neurodivergence, um, being in healthcare as a nurse, and so I want others to really learn from that. And um, I I think I mean, it's a huge joke in nursing and it's kind of sad, but we say nurses are the worst patients. We make the worst patients. We are wired to help other people, and that's what we do all the time. And so I think we're not very good advocates for ourselves. And so that's been my focus. And I think ways to do that are just starting to have some more acceptance, starting to realize that self-care is really important. I oftentimes am telling people like I realize that you want to um, be putting your all into this, but if you're not taking care of yourself, what do you have left to give? You can't pour from an empty cup. So it's a great question that you're asking is how do you advocate for yourself? I think there needs to be some better awareness. And I think when it comes to the neurodivergent community and in healthcare, there's some a little, more acceptance, I think maybe abroad and different things. And I'm hoping it'll get over here at some point in the United States, but we just aren't there yet. There isn't really acknowledgement and a push for how to accommodate people that, think differently in healthcare.
No, I gotta ask. Now that you realize that you are and been diagnosed that you are neurodivergent, do you see more or do you have a sense now when you're working that when you're dealing with a patient or even another nurse, that do you get the sense that, oh, they may be neurodivergent as well? I see a lot of myself in them. And do you kind of like bring it up to them or do you keep it to yourself? What do you do?
Um, I find that just because the job I'm in right now, not so much, but it's more so with my friends and my community and the people around me. And I definitely do. It's kind of like when you buy that car and then all of a sudden you start seeing that everybody has that car. It's the same sort of idea. So now that I've put so much time and effort into it and research, and I've also helped my son and been navigating the school system with him. I oftentimes will see just different, sometimes even subtle things in some of my friends' children and some of my friends who are coming to me and asking for advice and are struggling. And I kind of think, I there's a good chance that you probably are neurodivergent as well. So I you are 100% correct. I definitely see it. And I do think there is something to be said for having people at least try things to see if making accommodations or using tools to help you, whether you have a diagnosis or not, gets you improvement in what in your challenges. Um, yeah, I think it's important. So as a nurse, it's out of my scope to diagnose. So I can't say, hey, you definitely seem like you probably have that. But I do recommend to people, I think, trying things, even if you don't think it, maybe it's something that will work for you.
All right. Now, let me lead that lead, kind of leads me into this next question, which is what unique strengths or perspectives do neurodivergent nurses bring to the healthcare that neurotypical colleagues may overlook?
Mhm. I think that empathy is huge. I talked about that before, but creativity, I think that's a big one too. Um, Out of the box thinking. So it's very common for someone that's neurodivergent to look at a problem differently and to be thinking of a solution in a different way. And so I absolutely have seen that individuals in healthcare, nurses, other healthcare workers that are neurodivergent are absolutely contributing some of these amazing gifts. And I think those are some of the biggest ones.
Now, let's dive into a little bit of nursing and being a mom. As a mom with a son who's got moderate ADHD, what lessons have you learned that you wish more parents or teachers knew?
He's not a bad kid. He's actually amazing. He has a lot of wonderful talents and gifts. And we had a very difficult start to his school career with with a very less than understanding teacher for kindergarten. And what I wanted her to know, and what I would tell parents and teachers now is have some patience, have a little, a little compassion, a little understanding. It's not intentional.
Hmm.
Um, I would get notes back from his kindergarten teacher, and she would say things like, well, he was having a great day until he started whistling. And in my mind, I'm thinking, is that such a big deal? Like, I mean, they're in kindergarten. Is that so? I think we're definitely headed in that direction where, and my time working in the schools showed me that they're definitely trying to be more accommodating, different types of seating, sensory rooms, a lot of different things for kids that are neurodivergence, autism, ADHD, dyslexia. So they're making a lot of progress in schools. I think it's definitely somewhere where there's been more. Um, but yeah, they're not broken. There's nothing wrong. You just need to figure out how to work with them and how to work with their brain and have some understanding.
I mean, that is so true. And I truly believe the problem with the school system is they're teaching from the old handbook. And everything now is brand new. Neurodivergency is something they're not used to, and they're still using the old rule book. You, I personally think those books need to be thrown out the window, and they need to be taught a whole new way of teaching.
I do. I mean, I would agree with you. I think that's a very true statement.
Now, how has your own ADHD diagnosed influence your parenting approach?
Oh my goodness. Um, I think it's made me stop and think more. Um, I I feel like there are some times when there's a sense of overwhelm and there's an emotional feeling and a little bit of that impulsivity. And I have to stop myself and realize that they might be doing something that is triggering this, but it's my own way of thinking and how I'm responding to things. And so it has made me, I think, more compassionate and more ready and willing to just take a step back. And I'm not perfect by any means and will never claim to be, but that has definitely helped in knowing that that's what's going on now. It at least makes me feel like, okay, you're not a bad mom. You're just having, a difficult time with this situation. And I do utilize breaks a lot more now and will advocate, even if it's with my kids, and tell them, hey, mom needs a couple minutes to just kind of think this through. And they've all gotten really good at knowing, mom is going to come back. She's going to talk to me about it. We just need to kind of just step away and think things through and do some breathing and stretching. And I really encourage the kids to do that as well, too. We talk a lot about that. And so we all kind of in our house talk about taking your own timeouts.
That is so important. I mean, especially when raising kids, that they need to understand, like, if you are stressed, if you are feeling that uncertainty and you don't know what to do, take a step back, take a time out, because it's like that old adage of come back with a fresh set of eyes. When
Mhm.
you're tired and you can't focus on things, when you're crabby, when you're angry, take a break because your mind is not in the right mindset. And when you come back all refreshed, you're seeing things in a whole new way.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I I feel really bad because like we talked about that kind of meltdown period. It's hard because I feel like a lot of times I see my coworkers more often and they probably see the better side of me. And then I get home and I'm having a meltdown, and that's the time where I'm primarily spending with my kids. And it is difficult. It's hard to not feel like you're like it's hard to not feel like your kids or your family are getting kind of the short end of the stick.
Now, was there a moment when your professional and your personal experiences intersected in the surprising ways? Like understanding your son's needs through your nursing experience?
Oh, what a good question. You're good at this. Has anybody told you that? Um, so for me, a lot when I was a school nurse, because I saw a lot of my son in the kids that I was helping. And so I would spend time, my job primarily was a lot of meetings as a school nurse, doing those IEP meetings and doing the medical portion and the health portion on all of those. And so it definitely gave me a new perspective as to how the school system looks at kids with ADHD. And it made me an even bigger supporter of getting him the help that he needs. Because when I saw the things that he was struggling with and realized that there were options in the school because I knew about them from my nursing and being a school nurse, I was definitely more eager and would speak up more at his meetings to try to get that support. So for me, I think that was kind of the biggest intersection was that job, um, that nursing part of my nursing career, and then yeah, just seeing him struggle with those things.
Now, can you tell us more about the business you started for neurodivergent healthcare workers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really wanted to create something that was basically what I was looking for. So I felt really alone. So the last several years in my nursing career recently have, realized since my diagnosis how much of an effect it's had on my nursing career and what I'm doing and how I'm interacting and uh, how I balance my personal life. And it's been a lot of trial and error, like I said. And I was looking for something like this. I wanted, any sort of a group, people to talk to, because I kind of stopped and looked around at my work and felt like there wasn't really anybody that could relate to me. And if there was, they were doing a great job masking because I wouldn't know who it was. And so I set out to create really what I had been looking for. And that's really just a community of other, neurodivergent healthcare workers and created just resources. And then I've started coaching too, using my nursing background and my lived experience with all of this.
Now, what gaps did you notice in support resources or the community that inspired you to set this all up?
I I felt like every time I talked to my manager, I just got this bewildered look like they had no idea what I was talking about. And I got to a point where I was just very frustrated because I wanted to explain to them what I needed and that my brain was working differently. And every time I attempted to, I got absolutely severe RSD. I ended up just even within the past year having a panic attack in one of these meetings for the first time ever because I was absolutely terrified. And, they said something that was a little negative, but wasn't to anybody else's
Hmm.
ears life shattering. But when you have, this RSD, then to you it was like the end of the world. So I had a massive panic attack. And so the true gaps, I think, were just in my management not even understanding and knowing what was going on with me and why my reactions and way of thinking were different and why I asked the questions I did. And so I think that was the biggest gap that I kept running into. And I said, you know what? I need to do something about this. It's not, again, I have that sense of fairness
Yeah.
and I want to be helpful and I want it to be fair and I want people to understand.
I mean, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that is one of the biggest problems is meetings like those, whether it's talking, whether it's going in, talking with your heads of the departments or whatnot, or if it's in retail or any other businesses, they never make it comfortable for anybody. You walk in there and you feel like you got a million eyes staring at you. They use all this technical jargon or they talk down to you, and it makes it harder for us who are neurodivergent to sit there and say, hey, listen, you got to understand my mind works differently than the rest of the world's.
Mhm.
And even if we did come across saying that to them, it's like we get this blank stare of, what do you mean your mind works differently? And then we have to go into the whole explanation of how a neurotypical mind thinks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I just, I felt like it was just not something that they could relate to at all. And I get that some people don't, But I think when you're in a position of power and you're in a management position, you have to you have to realize and tailor some of what you're doing to the fact that people learn differently, people have different brains and think differently. And so I think that ultimately is a strength if a manager can do that.
Hmm. Now, what advice do you have for the neurodivergent professionals who feel isolated or unheard in their workplace?
Don't be afraid to speak up. I know it's difficult. It's not something that we're maybe used to doing to advocate for ourselves. But I found in my own career that when I started leaning into talking about my neurodivergence and going into these meetings, so, after that panic attack, the next meeting, I thought I got to do this differently. So when I started leaning into it and I went in there saying, I might have this reaction. It's not because that's what I want, how I want to react, but it's just going to happen. I want you to know these things beforehand. So when I started to just realize it and lean into it and be more open with sharing it, I found that my manager and the people that I was working with were had a lot better understanding. It made it easier. And so I think that's kind of a huge thing. And it is hard to do. I'm not by any means going to say it's easy. And I know a lot of people that are uncomfortable with, stepping up and being like, hey, I'm different. But honestly, that would be the one thing I would say.
Now, what strategies, tools, or routines have helped you thrive in both the work and home life?
I use a lot of tools to get me through the day, no matter where I am. So kind of that idea of offloading your brain somewhere else. So I kind of joke to people that my brain is on post-it notes scattered all over. So at any one given time, I have things always near me to write stuff down. I keep calendars, whiteboards I'm in our kitchen with everything. I utilize my phone for a lot of things. Um, and just the other tools would be a lot of breathing techniques, grounding techniques, yoga, stretching, qigong, things that really help connect you and kind of keep you in the moment. So those are the majority of the tools that I use. I also love my weighted blanket. That's one of my favorite things.
What's one thing you wish the world understood about neurodivergent nurses and the healthcare workers?
That there's nothing wrong with us. There is we are smart, brilliant nurses that are amazing at our jobs that just go about it in a different way, in
Mhm.
a way that maybe is not what was taught or how the healthcare system wants you to do something, but it doesn't make it wrong. And the end result is still the same. We have patients that are healthy and alive and um, and we have some amazing gifts to add.
And finally, where can people find out more about you and your business?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I actually have a website. It's mdclifeandhealth.com. I actually came up with that because it's the initials for my boys. And you can head over there, and I've got links to apply for coaching or for a program. And there's also chat. So if you just want to drop in and say hi, you can absolutely do that as well.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles. That was Kat Conches, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Kat.
Yeah, you're welcome.